Len Bias died from a drug overdose in 1986, but the truth behind his death reveals a story far more complex than most people realize. Before his tragic end, Bias was being called the next Michael Jordan by NBA scouts, who watched him dominate college basketball at the University of Maryland. Leonard Kevin Bias was an absolute phenom on the basketball court. He finished his college career with 2,149 points, making him the third highest scorer in Maryland history. His 5.7 rebounds per game showed he could impact the game in multiple ways. The awards kept piling up too. He won ACC Player of the Year twice in 1985 and 1986. He made the All-ACC First Team both years and earned All-America honors. In 1986, he was named ACC Athlete of the Year and had already won ACC Tournament MVP back in 1984. What made Bias special was not just his numbers, but how he played. Boston Celtics scout Ed Badger watched him multiple times and said he was maybe the closest thing to Michael Jordan to come out in a long time. A Sports Illustrated scouting report described him as a Michael Jordan type who was bigger with a better jump shot. Even legendary coaches like Bobby Knight and Mike Krzyzewski, who had coached against both players, considered Bias one of the best college players they had ever seen. Krzyzewski said Bias was the player no team had an answer for besides Jordan himself. His physical abilities were incredible. Bias was unusually strong for a small forward. His passing sense was described as bird-like, comparing him to Larry Bird. He had what scouts called a mechanically perfect mid-range jumper with unreal elevation that maximized his length. He could score from distance or attack the basket for powerful dunks. This combination of size, skill, and athleticism made him a once-in-a-generation prospect. If you're enjoying learning about this basketball legend, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible sports stories that go beyond the headlines. The 1986 NBA Draft changed everything for the Boston Celtics. Fresh off a championship victory, they held the second overall pick and selected Len Bias. This was seen as the perfect move to inject youth into an aging roster that included legends Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish. General manager Red Auerbach had reportedly wanted Bias for 3 years and even ran a careful misinformation campaign before the draft, pretending to be interested in other players to ensure Bias would still be available. Right after the selection, Auerbach immediately named Bias the team's sixth man for the upcoming season. The hope was that his presence would extend the careers of the Big Three by reducing their minutes and prevent the franchise from eventually declining. Everyone believed that with Bias on the roster, the Celtics could have won multiple championships, potentially extending their dynasty through the late 1980s and into the 1990s. But tragedy struck just 2 days after the draft. On June 19, 1986, Bias returned to his University of Maryland dormitory between 2:30 and 3 in the morning after an off-campus gathering. For the next 3 to 4 hours, he and several friends, including longtime friend Brian Tribble and teammates, used cocaine in his dorm suite. While talking with teammate Terry Long, Bias suffered a seizure and collapsed. At 6:32 in the morning, a 911 call was placed. Bias was found unconscious and not breathing. All attempts to revive him at the scene and at Leland Memorial Hospital failed. He was pronounced dead at 8:55 in the morning. The autopsy confirmed the cause of death as cardiac arrhythmia induced by a cocaine overdose, with no other drugs or alcohol found in his system. The immediate aftermath brought national shock and grief. More than 11,000 people attended a memorial service at the university's basketball arena, Cole Fieldhouse. A complex criminal investigation followed with lots of media attention. On July 25, 1986, a grand jury indicted Brian Tribble on charges of cocaine possession and possession with intent to distribute. Teammates Terry Long and David Gregg were also charged with cocaine possession and obstruction of justice, but their charges were dropped on October 20, 1986, in exchange for their testimony against Tribble. Despite public suspicion and political pressure, a jury acquitted Tribble of all charges related to the Bias case on June 3, 1987. This outcome showed a big disconnect between what the public wanted, which was a simple story with someone to blame, and the complexities of legal proof. While many people believed a friend had supplied the drugs that killed Bias, the legal system could not prove it beyond reasonable doubt. His death occurred at a critical moment in American politics as the war on drugs was gaining momentum. Politicians immediately seized on his highly publicized tragedy. Democrat House Speaker Tip O'Neill, representing Boston, where Bias was set to play, used the raw emotion of the Bias tragedy to push for new anti-drug legislation to help his party in the 1986 midterm elections. Within weeks, government committees that normally had nothing to do with drug policy began drafting anti-drug and anti-crime laws. A crucial problem was widespread misinformation about his death. While the autopsy confirmed Bias died from using powdered cocaine, rumors spread in the press falsely claiming he had smoked crack. This detail, though medically wrong, was politically powerful. It allowed legislators to tie his death to the crack frenzy of the time, a moral panic fueled by news accounts and the mistaken belief that crack was more dangerous and addictive than powder cocaine. This climate of hysteria led to the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986, which became law with lightning speed and minimal legislative review. The legislation, commonly known as the Len Bias laws, established mandatory minimum sentences for drug crimes, a policy Congress had actually repealed 16 years earlier. The act also introduced a provision for life sentences for any drug dealer whose product resulted in a user's death. The most damaging legacy was creating a massive sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine. The law mandated a 5-year minimum sentence for possession of just 5 grams of crack cocaine, while a similar sentence for powder cocaine required 500 grams. This created a 100-to-1 disparity based on flawed premises that studies have since debunked, showing similar biological effects from both forms of the drug. The law's stated goal was targeting high-level dealers, but the low-quantity thresholds meant it was overwhelmingly used against street-level operatives and low-level offenders. The racial disparity was immediate and obvious. Studies showed African Americans were far more likely to be convicted of crack-related offenses, while white Americans were more likely to be charged with powder cocaine crimes. This disparity significantly increased the racial gap in federal drug sentences, laying groundwork for prison and social issues that still affect America today. The tragedy did not end there. 4 years later, on December 5, 1990, his younger brother James J. Bias III was killed in a drive-by shooting following a dispute in a shopping mall parking lot. Jay, who was 20 years old and a former high school basketball standout like his brother, was pronounced dead at the same hospital where Len had died. In response to these unimaginable losses, the Bias family transformed their grief into powerful public advocacy. Lenise Bias, their mother, became a vocal anti-drug lecturer, traveling the country to share her son's story as a cautionary tale. She believed that if her son's story could prevent even one person from making a similar choice, his death would not have been in vain. The narrative of an invincible athlete brought down by drugs became more effective than any government campaign, with his death being referenced in documentaries and television shows. The second tragedy forced the family to evolve their message beyond personal choice about drug use. James Bias, the father, became an outspoken advocate for gun control, using Jay's murder to lobby for tougher legislation. This evolution reflected their growing understanding that their sons' deaths were connected to complex systemic issues beyond individual decisions. Len Bias's story represents a complicated truth that goes far beyond sports. He was remembered as unfulfilled promise, a sports legend who never was. His family courageously championed his story as a cautionary tale against drug use. Yet his death also ignited a punitive legal crusade that disproportionately targeted and incarcerated communities like the one he came from. The law passed in his name, based on misinformation and political panic, created decades of mass incarceration and worsened racial inequalities. His legacy serves as a stark reminder of how a single devastating event can ripple outward to shape national policy and societal justice for generations. Despite the tragic circumstances and misuse of his story for political gain, Bias is remembered for his incredible talent and the resilience his family showed in turning their grief into advocacy for positive change. What do you think about how Len Bias's story was used to create laws that had such different effects than intended? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that reveal the complex truths behind sports history's most memorable moments.